This is Live from the Table, the official podcast of New York's world-famous Comedy Cellar, coming at you on Sirius XM 99, Raw Dog, and on the Laugh Button Podcast Network. Dan Naturman here. And with me is Noam Dworman, owner of the world-famous Comedy Cellar, Periel Aschenbrand, our producer and on-air personality.
How does she get to be an on-air personality?
I don't know.
We didn't hire her for that.
Just kind of evolved in that direction. It's funny you should ask that. And with us, making her, I believe, debut on the Live from the Table podcast, if I am not mistaken, is Katie Hannigan.
Hello.
How do you do, Katie Hannigan? Katie Hannigan.
Thank you for having me.
She's a comic, a Comedy Cellar regular, a regular at Aruba Ray's comedy in Aruba.
In Aruba itself.
In Aruba. And she has appeared on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, the Comedy Central, the Travel Channel, Oxygen Network, and MTV, just to name a few. Noam, I have one thing I wanted to bring up about last week's show, if I may. Last week we had on Ismail Lufti, who's a practicing Muslim. You know Ismail.
I do. He's a great guy.
So every time he mentioned the Prophet Muhammad, he said, "Peace be upon him." He said that about 4 times at least.
I didn't hear it. I'm
and
deaf.
Noam, well, of course you heard it, but what's interesting is Noam didn't even notice. Noam was so into the conversation. It was obvious. It wasn't an issue of it not being, he said it as loud as he said everything else he said. My point is, how do we trust, it struck me, how do you trust eyewitness testimony? You know, I mean, this shows you the
No, I am hard of hearing. I might not have heard it.
You have selective
Because they don't. No, they don't say it as.
You
They don't say it as loud as. They don't say it as loud as their conversation. They kind of say it to themselves. It's not. They don't say. It's not conversational.
No, I heard it perfectly.
Well, okay. I'm gonna go back. We'll go back. And Nicole, can you bring up the tape? You don't have it. All right. Good job, Nicole.
Oh, we can't that because that would be interesting.
Oh, we can do it. We could put this off to next week and play it.
But it struck me. Now maybe you didn't hear it, but it struck me that it's human ability to kind of absorb everything they see and hear is limited.
Yeah, but you're right about eyewitness testimony. But I think you don't realize how deaf I am. I think I would have heard it otherwise because I'm pretty good at, as opposed to some people. I listen when people are talking.
Oh, sure. You listen. It depends who's talking. Don't make me call your wife.
Nicole, did you hear the peace be upon him?
I did.
Yeah, and she's sitting all the way over there. So,
Yeah.
you know, it might be an issue with your hearing.
Maybe I was talking, but you know, because Periel, what you do sometimes is you don't listen to the answer and you just go on to another thing, like and somebody will, I'll have to say, wait, they didn't finish their point. Like they'll be in the middle of a point, there'll be some sort of detour, and then you just keep. I'm like, well, hold on, don't you remember they were about to make? They didn't finish that story because I do listen.
I'm trying to get better at doing that, not like interrupting.
Marriage counseling is good for that.
Yeah. Well, that's where I heard that I should consider.
Oh, you went to marriage counseling?
I've been in. Well, I'm not going to marriage counseling.
Juicy.
I've been in therapy before.
Couples therapy?
Yeah, I have been in couples therapy.
With Guy?
A long time ago, yeah.
Oh, wow.
By the way, Noam,
Why, have you never been in couples therapy?
I was one time before I was married, but it didn't end well. I told you. I ended with the therapist giving me a foot massage, and Juanita got really mad. And
Shut up! You're not. There's no way that's true.
It was massage therapy.
no, it was talk therapy, and she was also studying reflexology. And she says, "You're so stressed," and then she started giving me a foot massage. The therapist, and Juanita freaked out
That's amazing.
and walked out, and we never went back to therapy.
by the way, do you know who Katie Hannigan's? I assume we can talk about your significant other.
You can.
Katie Hannigan is involved in one of the premier comedy couples working today.
It's a love match.
Do you know who her boyfriend is?
No.
It's Mike Vecchione, our beloved Mike Vecchione.
Oh, wow!
Oh, you didn't
I've
know that?
heard all about you.
You didn't know that either?
Surprise.
Periel?
I didn't know either.
But it's a phenomenon that is not altogether rare. Comedian on comedian love.
Yes.
Do you find that it complicates or facilitates?
Oh, it's the
relationship?
only relationship that I could have, I think. I tried to date so many normal people. I was going to date a lawyer for a long time. I was looking for a lawyer, and it just doesn't ever work out because the schedule is not good.
Why did you want a lawyer?
You know, I just had something in the back of my mind. I said, I think I want to date a lawyer, you know?
Are you a lawyer?
No. I just
Nobody likes lawyers.
well, I know now. Yeah, they're very boring. And I dated a couple, and I just was like, oh my God. Not to mention, they're getting off of work as I'm going to work, so it would never. But it's also, they love comedians. Oh my God, so much attention. Every lawyer event, it's like, oh my God, you're so funny. I was like, oh, I know. Thank
How do you set about meeting a lawyer? Like you go to a bar near.
Well, I would get a divorce. That's the first way. No, I just think I was doing it online. I was just looking for a guy in a bow tie, and never worked out.
That's so funny.
Well, as a lawyer.
Well, I have a law degree, as does Noam.
Yeah.
I never practiced. Noam practiced, I think, for a brief.
No, I
period
never
of time.
practiced.
You never practiced?
No.
But the one thing about dating another comic is you probably don't get the adoration that you would get from a non-comic might be like, oh my God, they can't believe what you do.
No, that's
Well,
And
I
as
think
Mike
that's
Vecchione is like, yeah, I do that too.
Well, no, I think it's different for men because I think women find, being funny is like considered like a masculine trait. So like if a man dates a funny woman, he finds it like very intimidating usually, and he likes to be the funny one. So with Mike's like very appreciative of my humor, I think, more than like anyone I've ever dated.
But when somebody comes, I don't know. It just seems to me that when one person becomes successful and the other one doesn't, there's going to be some
maybe they'll get lucky and nobody will get success.
It'll be good. Yeah, it's a win-win.
Well, I think that can happen, but I also think that I think Mike is the kind of guy that if Katie spread her wings and flew, would be rooting for her every step of the way. That's the sense that I get.
Well, we live together now, so we share more now. So if one of us gets a lot of money, then it's a win-win for both of us.
Yeah, I think they're a solid couple as far as I can tell. But what do I know? I mean, it seems good to me. By the way,
Well, we're not in couples therapy, so I'll tell you that much.
It doesn't work. Couples therapy, just we talked about this. You can't be totally honest in couples therapy because if anybody in a couple actually said what they were really thinking, that the relationship would end. You'd say things that could never be unheard, and so it's just like you go to couples therapy and you have to offer a watered down version of what you really want to say, and you have to manipulate it. I think it's a total farce.
This is like the dark version
Well-
of your fucking crazy thing. That's not true. I mean, how are you supposed to have a relationship if you can't be honest with
Let's say it's like, you know what? My husband's penis is too small. You go to the therapist and say that.
That's not a thing.
He'll
though.
never get it out of his head. So you have to find a way, or something sexually,
No,
Well, if you don't want to be with your husband because his penis is too small, then you should just get a divorce. I think. I don't think you
Yeah.
should
Divorce is
stay
way
with
better
him
than
and then
therapy. Yeah.
and hating him for his tiny penis.
I can't
or like,
imagine.
no, you
that's-
make me sick.
Yeah, but that's also grounds.
When you
for
touch me, it makes
divorce.
me want to cringe.
Oh my God.
I'm just not attracted to you anymore.
Yeah, I mean,
No.
I think that's.
Divorce.
But therapy is like, I love this person. I want to work through it with them. Maybe we're not doing as great in the bedroom as we could be.
Or maybe it's not about that. I mean, I feel like there are all sorts of things that.
Well, what did you bring up in your therapy?
Well, I think it was more Guy it was really difficult for him to be with somebody who was just so perfect.
Do we want to hear?
Nicole, can we cut that out?
I hate to.
Who's our next guest?
Our next guest is Dave Stone, but he'll be here. He's a Comedy Cellar super fan.
The
I did want-
Scrabble guy.
I did want to hear Katie's perspective on Dave Chappelle's special. I assume you saw it.
I didn't watch it.
Oh, you didn't watch it?
No, you know what? I just decided I don't feel like watching it, and I'm not going to.
Oh, you're not obligated.
I don't feel like watching it, and I didn't really hear that great of stuff. I heard some people said, "Oh, like one moment was good, but overall it was mediocre." So I just thought, why am I going to force myself to watch this? Because I'm a comedian. I don't have to watch every. If I want to watch something, I'll rewatch Killing Them Softly, an amazing special. Why am I going to waste my time watching?
Who was Killing Him Softly?
That was Chappelle's first special.
Oh, that was Chappelle's first. I don't watch any
and
of
it was fantastic.
But I watched
know?
this one because I knew we would discuss it on the show, so I watched it for that reason.
Did
If
Mike
you
watch
saw
it?
this one and not the first. No, he didn't see it. He didn't see it because I think a lot of good TV has come out lately, and I watched Squid Game.
Yeah, all right.
I'll talk
I
about
wanna
Squid
watch
Game all night long.
I want to watch that.
Well,
Oh,
I
it's
wa- I
fantastic.
watched it as well. It's a lot of fun. I mean, you have to suspend disbelief. I don't want to give away any spoilers, but the whole thing is, kind of ridiculous. But
There are a few plot holes, I would say.
Yeah,
but
I
it's,
think-
it's a dystopian world, and you're going to get that.
Yeah, I don't think you can avoid plot holes in that kind of a show, but there are several. So, but I was able to put those aside.
You
and-
said plot holes, not potholes, right?
no, plot holes.
I'm
plot
deaf.
holes.
Go ahead.
So, but
Potholes.
Those two. Bad roads in
Bad
South
roads.
Korea.
by the way, I did also watch another recommendation I have is the DeLorean mini documentary series, whatever you want to go, like a 3-part series on John DeLorean.
That doesn't sound like a mini series.
Well, it's a 3-part like documentary, or
Mini-
3-episode, whatever you want to call it, on DeLorean, who of course made the famous car that Katie may not remember because she's perhaps too young. But there was a
Is that the car they had in Back to
there
the
was a car
Future?
from Back
it
to the
is, it
Future.
is.
Yes.
And he
Okay.
was like kind of the opposite of Elon Musk. I mean, he was insofar as Elon Musk, everything he touches turns to gold, whereas DeLorean, it was like a disaster after disaster. I mean, he was like a big deal in Detroit, but then he started his own car company, and it was like disaster, and he got indicted for various,
Even with a movie about the car and how awesome it was, he couldn't pull it off.
you know.
You know, my son watched Back to the Future and he was extremely uncomfortable. He's like, Daddy, I don't like this. I don't want to watch this. I don't want to watch it. And it hit me exactly why. Can you think of why?
The bullying. Is it the bullying?
Nope.
I feel like that made me.
That was a good guess, though.
He just doesn't believe that time travel is feasible.
Nope.
It defies.
Let me give you more facts. The whole family was watching it together.
The mom.
The
Sleeping with the mom. Yes.
He was so uncomfortable about this, the son having a sexual moment with the mom.
Well, I don't think the son did have a sexual moment with the mom.
No,
The
they didn't actually have sex, but there was like this attraction.
Doesn't he take her to the dance?
Yeah.
Well, there wasn't. No, the mother was attracted to him.
Yeah, that made.
But he was like, no way.
Right, but it made my son. Yeah, you're right. But it made my son extremely uncomfortable.
Well,
Just the thought of it.
obviously.
Just the thought of it was. He was.
It's awkward to
squirming.
watch that stuff with your mom.
Yeah.
I remember I watched the first episode of Game of Thrones with my parents, and that felt uncomfortable because there's a rape. And my mom, she comments on everything. She's, he's gonna rape her. It's like, oh my god, oh my god, it's awkward.
Yeah, a neighbor of ours was in Penthouse years ago. Like my sister came home
Ooh,
and said
hello.
Veronique is in Penthouse, and my father, not knowing what Penthouse was, I guess he didn't know it, or maybe he did. He bought,
The likely story.
he bought the issue, and he brought it in the car, and we opened it up. And we're like, and my father's like, "Oh my god!" It was Veronique, and obviously
Veronique.
very compromised.
I mean, the
poses.
cover of Penthouse magazine. Was your father an idiot?
Well, I don't know.
That accidental molestation.
Usually the cover of Penthouse is not full nude. I don't.
No,
think.
but it makes it pretty obvious it's not. The Atlantic.
Well, in any case, he bought the issue of Penthouse, and we looked through it, and
Penthouse, Entertainment for Men, or something. I guess that's Playboy, but it's pretty clear.
Anyway.
And then there's like the little blurbs of what the articles are about. I think it's pretty clear.
Well, maybe it was clear. I don't know. We're going back away. This was like in the early '80s.
I love that her name was Veronique.
Well, yeah, her father was a French Jew. Her mother was Vietnamese, and apparently, when you put those together, you get fire. Because she was. I mean, I was too young to be sexually attracted to her, but
Why?
Because I was probably 9 or 10 back at that time. That's a bit young. I was always attracted to like the girls in my class at that age.
Yeah.
That's good. That's probably much healthier.
I had a high school teacher who was in Playboy. Dr. Rice. She was very pretty, and it was one of my friends. Her dad had the issue.
Wow.
I know. I never looked at it, but I heard.
Wow.
And she was a teacher in your school. What'd she teach? And she was
Art.
and she was a doctor.
She was a doctor of art.
Oh well, that makes,
Yeah.
that makes more sense.
I had a teacher who dated Imus. Billy D. Olson. She dated Don Imus. She was super hot.
Noam, do you have any thoughts about Trump's
What did
words?
he say about Colin Powell?
Okay, this was shortly after Colin Powell died,
It's really disgusting.
and he said
Trump said something disgusting?
No, it's like really.
Yeah, I find that hard to believe.
he said as follows. He said, "Wonderful to see Colin Powell, who made big mistakes on Iraq and famously so-called weapons of mass destruction, be treated in death so beautifully by the fake news media." Trump said in a statement released Tuesday morning, "Hope that happens to me someday. He was a classic rhino, Republican in name only, if that. Always being the first to attack other Republicans. He made plenty of mistakes, but anyway, may he rest in peace."
This guy is unbelievable.
Just another bid for attention.
I can't defend that. Can anybody defend that?
No, it's totally indefendable.
Is it indefendable because Colin Powell?
Yeah.
Indefensible. Thank you.
Is it indefensible because Colin Powell has died, or because the words themselves are untrue?
Because he died. And I'll say this. Hey,
Hello, Dave. Take a
that's
seat.
the Scrabble guy?
That's the Scrabble guy.
I didn't know he was a Scrabble guy. So, okay, but I will say this about that.
Okay.
And this is not a defense of Trump because I find it awful what he said. But I would say the following. That when, for instance, like Rush Limbaugh died, when a conservative dies, the people on the left do the same thing. They say awful things about people who have died. And everybody on the left thinks, well, that's okay because they're right. Like, he was horrible, so it's okay for us to say it. So let's just bear that in mind. Bear this Colin Powell in mind. Like, next time, like, when Lindsey Graham dies or some right-wing figure dies, you will see that people on the left will say exactly the same sort of thing, and nobody will have a problem with it. It's only when it comes in the opposite direction that people realize what is, I think, true is that you should not speak that way about people who just died. It's not necessary, and it's mean, and it's,
I mean, there
Colin
are.
Powell was a patriot, obviously, even if you made a mistake about weapons of mass destruction.
I mean, there's exceptions to that rule, obviously. If somebody, I mean, when Saddam Hussein died, you wouldn't have thought it inappropriate, or when Osama bin Laden died, you wouldn't have thought it inappropriate to badmouth them. So it's not a rule that applies universally, but it's a general rule unless somebody is really bad.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're somebody who's, wanted for murder or
But I think it's also because of who Trump is and like his, quote unquote stature that it's just so fucking inappropriate. Like,
Well, they'll say when Trump dies, rest assured, the people that are complaining about Trump's words about Colin Powell will say bad things about Trump when he
me
dies.
too.
I'll go even further. If Colin Powell had not apparently switched party allegiance because he endorsed Obama. I don't know if he's actually left the Republican Party, but he was endorsing Democrats. When George W. Bush dies, people will say stuff about him and how he murdered and blah, 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 blah. The only reason Colin Powell is being embraced by people in the middle and the left right now is because he seemed to have, I'm using quotes, seen the error of his ways and now has embraced Obama and Biden and all that. So they, I mean, it's all politics. So they love him now because he's one of the good ones. But if he had remained a staunch conservative, unapologetic about the Gulf War, you'd be seeing people on the left saying this kind of thing about Colin Powell. So, they're all hypocrites. That's my feeling about it. Yeah.
David,
but I don't like it. I like Colin Powell.
Katie, any thoughts about all of this?
Well, I just think, Trump he just peddles outrage culture, he just uses it for attention. So I think he probably, whether he sincerely thought that or not, I think that, he just wants to stay in the public eye. So he just says stuff like that. And then people who are on the left get outraged by it. So many people are addicted to outrage, and it just only helps him. So I just think it's, I just don't pay attention to it.
I do want to say, I agree with you. Was the other issue you wanted to talk about, Dan? Because I wanted to say something personal in nature. Go ahead.
Well, the other issues were my birthday.
Chappelle and Netflix, right?
That's an issue.
Chappelle and Netflix, and there's a walkout from the trans employees of Netflix that I guess had
How many trans employees are there?
I don't know, but there's some number.
Is it trans employees or people who are just?
Well, that's what it said in the
due to
article.
the Chappelle special.
Because of Chappelle's in protest about what's his name, David Sarandos or whatever his name is.
Yeah.
And he apologized, right? He said he didn't handle it well or something.
I don't know about that, but
Yeah.
So So do you have thoughts on that, or should we move on?
Well, I spoke to two trans people about it yesterday, and transes. What? Anyway, I spoke to two
trans people.
Two trans people, and they both thought that Chappelle's. Why nodding your head now?
It's just funny.
They both thought that Chappelle was getting a bum rap. They thought that Chappelle's special was okay. They for whatever reason they weren't that bothered by what he said. I think that at first it looked like Netflix was going to stand up against this, and people were applauding Netflix. But I think now that even though they're going to stand ostensibly stand behind Chappelle, you are not going to see Netflix greenlight any controversial projects in the future. So in the end, I think that it's another win for the forces of cancel culture, as it were, or lack of a better phrase. I think that, I mean, that's what I said last week on the show. The issue, I mean, people should be able to say what they want. I don't like things that Chappelle said about Jews, but I disagree with him. But I just think it's ridiculous that people can't say what they want to say. He should be able to say whatever he wants to say.
David Stone is nodding in agreement. Let me introduce David Stone. David Stone is there's no other way to describe him. He's a Comedy Cellar superfan.
Oh, thank you.
I see him here. I don't know how often you come to the shows here.
I do.
But once a week you see a show?
Talk closer to the mic.
It used to be once a week or even more. I think my next show is number 180.
Now, do you know Andy Barron? He's another guy that comes all the time.
I think we've seen each other.
And he says that you ain't shit.
That's true. He's right. He comes with his wife, right?
No, yes, he does. He
Okay.
sometimes comes with his
So
wife.
we've introduced ourselves, but we haven't competed actively. I don't know what his number is, but mine's near 200.
His number is, I would assume, in that ballpark.
Yeah,
I think I see him here more than you, to be honest. Now, that may be because he's simply better than you as a fan,
Could be.
or
He's more conspicuous.
He is very conspicuous.
he's more conspicuous, or perhaps because he happens to be here when I'm here.
It could be. He might be.
So these are all
might be
possible.
Maybe
looking-
he's a super fan of you.
He wants to hear more about
That
Sheila.
could be. That could be.
Yeah.
So what do you think about Chappelle, Dan? Oh, you want to say something about
well,
Chappelle?
Well, no. One funny thing I was going to address is that we don't actually have a single word for multiple people who are trans, and you were looking for it. And I just before you said that, I looked it up, and there is no acceptable word like trans is.
Well, we used to have one, but now it's considered.
Right, exactly. So we don't have that word, and I guess, I don't think we need one. We seem to be getting by just fine with saying a trans person or whatever. But
People
it's-
of trans.
Well, I
Did
should
you
I'm
mention.
wondering
mention
if we're gonna-
trans people.
no, but there's not a single word like there is for other.
When we
groups
talk
that
about
try to-
gay America, do we talk about trans America? Because that used to be an insurance.
That's true. I don't. I just think it's an interesting thing to see where the language is headed, and are we going to?
Should I
develop
mention
a new
Dave
term?
Stone is a Scrabble grandmaster? I don't know, black belt. I don't know what the terminology is in that
I
world.
think I'm probably now just a red belt.
A red belt.
I used to be a very active Scrabble tournament player, and was at one point. Well, I guess you have my introduction, but I can do it for you.
Well, that's actually Dan's job.
Yeah, but I
not mine.
somehow don't have it, so go ahead.
I at one point when I was actively playing a lot, I was among the top 50 rated players in North America.
Wow.
And that sounds great, like if it were chess, but there aren't that many active Scrabble tournament players at any one point. There might be like 2,000, let's say, and maybe at the height of Scrabble play, maybe 4,000. But I was among the top players at one point, and then I just had family, had other reasons not to stay in it, and more recently the dictionary changes kind of turned me off. So we'll talk about that.
We're going to talk about the dictionary changes, but what's more important when you lose a Scrabble game? What is usually the mistake? That your spelling was bad, your vocabulary is weak, or your strategy was off?
It's actually there was a really interesting study that led to the Scrabble games that you see on Facebook and things like Words with Friends. But the one on Facebook was actually purchased by them from a guy that I've played with. He was a top player, and he did exactly what you're talking about in the early days of AI, and he figured out what was wrong with his game, and it came down to those three things. Sometimes it was a strategic thing, sometimes it was a lack of word knowledge, and sometimes it was just bad luck, of course. So he figured out what he could do to improve his game, and it came down to learning more words, including certain kinds of words that come up more often, and then also figuring out certain strategic things that he was missing, and figuring out what's the value, for example, of an S. It says 1 on it, but it's actually worth 8 or 9 points of extrinsic value. Yeah, because it's so valuable to you if you know how to use it right.
What is the rule in terms of the official Scrabble rule as far as which words are eligible?
Yeah, that's
Because we have a
that's right,
million
it's
words
very-
that people use. I could say adorbs. I mean, that's a word that is used. Amazeballs, that's a word that people use, but yet I assume it's not in the dictionary, or I don't know what's considered a valid Scrabble word.
Adorbs has not been accepted yet. I can guarantee it'll be in the next dictionary.
So that dictionary you have is the official, like if it's not in there in terms of official Scrabble, you can't use it.
Yes, and a little bit no. So this is the acceptable word list, except for a funny thing that happened a few years ago, and we'll talk about that.
Okay, you have a presentation. He has papers and he's got a whiteboard. So go ahead. Give us your. Are we finished with Chappelle?
I think so.
Can I make my one personal statement and then
Yeah,
we're
go
gonna.
ahead.
So we talk about like a dear friend of mine and a person who worked at the Olive Tree for a long time died a couple weeks ago, committed suicide, and I brought this up last week, but it's really been bothering me, and I just want to make the point again. I'm even thinking about pursuing it. So he was mentally ill, and he had numerous other mentally ill events. He was in taken to Bellevue for observation more than once, and he had a fight at home, and the cops came with his sister. And the sister begged them to take him to the mental hospital, and the cops just wouldn't take him to the hospital. Instead, they took him to get arraigned or whatever the word is, and so they got an order of protection, and so they put him back out on the street. So he had no place to go, right? And he jumped off a bridge and killed himself. So and so we had a big memorial for me yesterday, but it just occurred to me, and I just that. If you see a person bleeding on the street, you would know to take them to a hospital. He needs medical attention. But for some reason, when we see a person having a mental bleeding, we don't take them to a hospital, or we might not take them to a hospital. We take them to jail. And this is wrong, right? This is wrong. And so I'm even thinking about getting a lawyer and trying to bring attention to this issue because it's clear to me that this man died and didn't have to die. And, you don't know what the reason is. It could just be bad judgment. It could be bad training. It could be that the paperwork is more involved to go to a mental hospital than who the hell knows, or any number of those things.
Well, also because the person might not want to go to a mental hospital. I mean, you have to deal with somebody's wishes, unlike a person that's bleeding on the street that it will...
No, they can take a person who doesn't want to go.
Especially in a situation like that.
Well, they have to. The person has to be judged to be not able to make decisions, which is a process in and of itself. Whereas a guy bleeding unconscious, you take him to the hospital, there's no issue.
You're right.
They also have to be either a danger to themselves or somebody else.
The cops may not. I don't know how that decision is made. I don't know the procedures. I want to educate myself on the procedures. And the cops, I don't know how all that works. However it works, it's not working as it should.
I don't think the answer is going to be to hire a lawyer to go after anyone in particular, because unfortunately I think that's been tried a lot and it obviously hasn't worked. And what we had going on in the 60s and 70s was much better than we have now. We've taken a big step backwards in terms of mental health and the way we treat it. My parents are both psychiatrists. So
I thought you said my parents are both crazy.
That too.
This discussion comes up a lot. And I think the way to go, if you really want to pursue it, would maybe be to talk to people who are elected officials, the mayor, Congress people.
Good luck getting in touch with an elected official.
Yeah,
I've had others.
I can't think of what else. I mean, it really requires a groundswell, and unfortunately, we don't have enough of that going on now. But I can't think of another way to fix this.
To try to get.
Maybe you should tweet about it.
I would like to get in touch with somebody. Just elected officials are another bugaboo of mine, because used to be years ago when I had you could actually contact an elected official. You cannot get an elected official's office to call you back for anything anymore. Not Schumer, not Jill, not that I want to talk to Schumer, but just somebody's office. We're fairly prominent New York business here. We had a problem last year. Couldn't get anybody. Then calling Gillibrand's office, couldn't get anybody. I don't even know who the congressman, the representative is. But years ago, I remember we had an issue, and I contacted Senator D'Amato's office. And like an hour later, there's somebody on the phone. They sent me a big packet of information. They were actually there to serve constituents. I don't even know what the fuck these senators think their job is anymore. And then Schumer was out there talking about how, this is a year ago, July, I think, the comedy clubs need the show business places need money. They're all on life support. We're going to have our Save Our Stages program. And it was more than over a year, like 18 months. People still hadn't gotten money. You think Schumer would say something or try? He doesn't care. He was just about being in front of the cameras and registering in people's brains that he cared about this issue. It didn't actually matter whether anybody ever got a dime. It didn't matter how many places actually went out of business. It is just, and listen, this is one thing Trump is right about, I mean, there's no bottom to how dishonest these elected. I don't think it's always been this way. Maybe it has been, but it is just horrible what's going on, especially in one-party states like New York. And maybe, as I'm speaking out loud, maybe that's part of it. Maybe now that it's so unlikely that any Democratic official in New York will really be challenged by the other party, they don't give a shit. He's much more worried about AOC outflanking him on the ultra far crazy left than he is about constituent service.
Listen, there is a very, very serious mental health crisis going on
At this table.
No, I'm serious.
Which, of course, leads us to Scrabble.
Scrabble. Go ahead. Go ahead. Wait, I don't mean to cut Periel off like you meant to. Go ahead. What?
Well, we have to
Go ahead.
at some point we have to get to Scrabble.
Go get to Scrabble.
Yeah,
we'll
make
talk
your
about it
presentation.
later.
What are
make
your
it quick.
thoughts on playing a filthy word like anal? I often find that.
What's filthy about that?
That's such an interesting question, and I'm a father of 3 and a teacher, and that's the kind of word where, if it comes up, I try
At
to
what cost?
I
are
try
you
to
willing
address
to
it and
win?
say, well, I don't want to put someone on the spot, but it's more about what a person is comfortable with or not. So I remember when maybe 30 years ago, a lot of kids were afraid to say vagina or penis, and now it's a very common thing because I think we've turned the page in that regard in a positive way.
Nicole, you'll bleep that out later? Go ahead.
To say these are body parts, and kids should be able to discuss them because it can be very important at times, right? We don't want to make it so a kid can't discuss what part of them is hurting or something bad has happened. A person has touched them in the wrong place. We don't want to have them say something that doesn't make sense or is obfuscating something important. So it's great that we're getting to the point where we can talk about those words. And so now you're getting to an interesting question, which is what constitutes a dirty word or an offensive word or whatever. And this is a very problematic discussion, which is why I'm here. Scrabble decided that certain words were offensive to the point of being slurs, and that they wanted to take them out of the dictionary.
Like what?
Yeah. So
You can't say the words?
I'm going to say one.
Oh.
I'm really going to offend you. Ready? Bohunk.
Bohunk?
Now, what is that a slur for? Because I know
I
sometimes
just called him a bohunk. So
The only time I've ever heard that word is in the movie 16 Candles.
really,
16 Candles, yeah.
That movie
when
is actually-
Long Duck Dong, I think, referred
Yeah.
to somebody as a bohunk or something.
What's a
wow, I've never heard
bohunk?
it before. Okay, so the history of that word is related to Hungarian, the hunk part, and it goes back to when a lot of Hungarian and other Eastern European immigrants came over and displaced a lot of African American workers, and people who were at the very bottom of the totem pole in terms of working, that got displaced by this influx of a large number of Hungarians, and so the term was a derogatory term for a white person of that particular background. So we got something like Hungarian, and that leads to hunky with a U, and then honky, and then bohunk related to the hunky part. So it's an obscure word for white person in a derogatory sense that got taken out of the dictionary.
So I have this reference. What exactly is a bohunk, and why is everyone upset that Sam's sister is marrying one? It's a derogatory term from someone of Hungarian descent or someone from Central or Southeastern Europe, and by extension, a brute or buffoon. And is one of 10 slang terms from 16 Candles, according to this mentalfloss.com article.
Okay,
In any
next.
case,
What else?
So I'm just giving you an example of how crazy this deletion.
Who's in charge?
Mania
Who's
went.
making those decisions?
Oh boy! So
the
let's go.
International
Some
Board of
bohunks.
Scrabble.
Go ahead. Some dumb bohunks.
So let's go back.
Some privileged bohunks.
Let's go back to how it all started. Scrabble has been played since the 30s and 40s, and at some point, someone said, "Hey, we need an official dictionary so we can have official games and a rating and all these other things, and have championships." So early on, they used Funk and Wagnalls, a very a once honored dictionary, and then there were certain omissions, too many omissions of good words. So they then said, "Look, let's take any word that's in all 5 of these dictionaries, like Merriam-Webster's and some other collegiate dictionaries. Any word that's in all 5 has to be good." I think they later changed it to 3 out of the 5, and that turned into the first Scrabble Players Dictionary, the official Scrabble Players Dictionary, OSPD, and then later editions, OSPD 2 and 3, and so on. But then at some point in '93, I think, or somewhere in the early '90s, a woman was talking with her friends. There are different versions of the story, but basically it came down to this woman. I think her name was Judith Grad, a woman in Virginia. She was an art gallery owner, and she liked to play Scrabble, and so did some of her friends, who said, "Did you know that the word Jew is playable in Scrabble?" And she said, "Well, why would that be playable? It's uppercase, and we know that you're not allowed to include uppercase words. So, for example, a person's name, like Daniel wouldn't be included because it's not a Scrabble word. It's not
Proper nouns.
lowercase. Now, a word like Dan could be because it's a martial arts term. So a word that happens to be a term like John, I'm going to the John, no problem. We don't write it with an uppercase J.
That's a homonym.
Yeah, so, well, it has many different meanings. And so if we say I'm going to the John, it happens to be lowercase. So now we have a source for all these words. And Judith Grad says, hey, wait a second, Jews in here, what does it mean? And it says to bargain someone. A derogatory, right? So it's used as so not only is it
Why is that derogatory?
now at this table it's probably a jokey word, like we would all say, yeah, I Jewed him down.
I wouldn't say that.
You
Are
better
you
not.
Jewish? Right? So I could say it to Dan with a wink, like the same way that an African American player might say the N word, and there would be camaraderie with that word. It wouldn't be saying something negative. Whereas if I say, or if you said to me, I Jewed him down, I'd think, wow, that probably fell flat. You know, you maybe shouldn't be saying that term. Do you know what that word means?
Should I use it in my act?
So that's the beginning of the expurgation. When this woman pointed that out, or had it point out to her that Jew was playable, she then went to the dictionary and found a bunch of words that were equally offensive to her. And she said, why do we have these offensive words in a dictionary of a game that can be played by children and families? And she had a point. So what ended up happening was this overreaction. The pendulum swung very far over, and thanks to her letter writing campaign, they removed all these words. And then the Scrabble players rebelled and said, we don't want to use that dictionary then, because that doesn't represent our values, which are that letters coming together in a string don't have a meaning that's intended to make you feel good or bad, or they're just letters, they're just representing words. Nothing wrong with that. So Scrabble players, for the most part, were against the deletion of these words. And so the Scrabble players, on behalf of the players, the president of the Scrabble Association said, okay, we have a compromise. We're going to have a second list. We're going to have the one that gets printed, the dictionary here, and we're going to have a list that later got called as a joke the poo list of all the words that had been taken out but were still playable. So you didn't have them in school Scrabble, which makes some sense, I guess, and they weren't going to appear on the screen in a televised game, which every so often ESPN would have, like have a championship. You couldn't play those words in anything that was going to draw a lot of attention and a lot of negative attention. So they were still playable, but not under certain circumstances.
So actually, I didn't realize it. So no words that demand capitalization are allowed in Scrabble.
So how did the Germans play Scrabble?
Yeah, really.
Italian is not.
No.
No,
Italian
I did.
couldn't be played.
That joke fell flat, but let me explain it to you. In German, every noun is capitalized.
Right. So I'm not sure. I guess
So, I
German
don't
they
know if you
probably
kn-
play that you don't have to capitalize in that particular case.
I was obviously in German. There's some other rule, but I don't know if you knew that, Noam. Did you know that?
I
In
didn't
German,
know that.
every noun is capitalized.
So Italian cannot be played, but French can, because you can French with a girl or a boy, and that's okay. You can French kiss. You can also French fry. Something has a different meaning. So it has a
You
lowercase
can't
meaning.
French kiss is an French is an.
It's part of a
is an
phrase to French
adjective.
kiss. Well, you can say we were Frenching, or we can French some fries.
Adverb. It's an adverb. French.
We can also French some fries, though. So then it's used as a verb, and it can take Frenching.
If I look at
What's
French and French-
Italianing? That's just yelling at someone.
So then
Well,
why
I
can't
mean,
you Jew somebody?
any word. I mean, in common vernacular, any word can be used as an adjective.
Or an adverb.
You
as
know,
an
like I could say,
French
I
kiss.
Noamed him. That means I just harangued him with this.
What is an adjective? It's an adjective. If I've kissed her Frenchly would be an adverb, right?
Right.
It's a French
Yeah.
kiss. Two French kiss.
That's a
I get
verb.
that's a compound. It's a
Well,
compound
two French
verb.
kiss would be a compound, right?
Yeah,
But we can
yeah.
still distinguish it, like by saying I Frenched these fries, or I Frenched
Now, I
this
just want to
Oreo.
just jump in really quickly and say, okay, this is an interesting discussion, but there's two ways we can go. We can discuss Scrabble more, or
French kiss.
the life of a superfan.
Well, I actually want you guys to do one fun thing, and then
Okay.
go
Oh,
either
a
way.
game.
Yeah, pass those down, please.
Okay, well, we're having a game.
Oh, I don't like the way these look.
Pass those down, please.
This is Periel.
So you
Yep.
want you want each to take one?
Everybody gets one pile. These
One
are,
pile.
Yeah.
We got a
now,
pile of words,
got a
and
pile
each,
Don't
of
say any of the
words.
words. Don't say any of the words.
each
Don't say the
paper
words.
has
What I want you to
two
do,
words on it.
if you'll be so kind, I tried to put words that were kind of related, but one of them
Did you
I
pick
didn't
these
say-
words for me, or this is random?
randomly.
Okay.
They're actually alphabetized, so the one on the left is coming before.
There's a piece of paper
Yep.
with two words,
Right.
a word on the left and a word on the right, and we each have. I have
You have
four.
four words,
I have
and on
Eight
one
words
on each sheet,
yeah.
one of the words is not permitted in Scrabble, and one of them is. And I think you might be surprised at which ones.
Okay.
So
Okay. Well, this is.
whoever wants to take a turn, go ahead.
Well, it's
We'll start
Dan's
with
birthday.
Catherine.
Okay.
But we're ladies first.
This is like getting canceled roulette. I don't know what to say.
There is that possibility.
Katie.
So feel free
what do you
to,
want
feel
Katie
free
to
to feel free
So the
not
rules
to
are
say
Katie has to go through each
She's gonna
pair
just
of
look at two
words and
words, yeah.
discuss decide what she
I'm
thinks.
pretty confident. I'm pretty confident. I think that.
Should she say with the 2 words?
She should read both words, I guess.
Oh,
If
okay.
that's okay.
My words are ofe, which I don't know what that means, and whitey spelled with a EY or whitey spelled WHITY. But I think the word that is included in the dictionary is ofe, even though I'm not sure what that is.
Well, whitey obviously sounds like a negative word for a white person, but it has another definition which is silly, which is the adjective form of white, which no one has ever used. No one has ever said that wall is rather whitey. And yet, that's okay because it has that other meaning. And ofe is another obscure word for a white person, and it doesn't even have a known etymology. So it's so old, we have no idea where it comes from, and nobody uses it. And yet, it was deleted from the dictionary.
So she
So
now
thank
go
you
to
for
the
playing.
next pair? Or
If
are
you
we-
wish, or we can
or
go
Did I
to the
offend everyone
Your
by
turn.
using that?
So she got it
Okay.
right or wrong.
She was wrong. She guessed
this-
I was wrong.
a
We
word
won't
that's
tell
Oh.
Mike.
an
but-
obscure word. Yeah, but thank you for playing. All right,
Okay.
Dan, you want to try?
Oh.
Well, should we just all right.
Or we can go through whichever you like.
Well, okay. I have 2 words: kike, which is a derogatory term for a Jew, and Nazi.
Kike means circle. I learned
That's
that.
where it comes from, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Right.
it does.
The idea was that it's possible that some of the
In Greek?
early inhabitants came over and didn't know how to make their mark other than a circle or an X, and so that's where that term came from. If it was
They would do a circle at
Wait,
Ellis
is that,
Island.
is that what language is kike a circle?
some, I think
It's in
Germanic.
Yiddish, isn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say Germanic or it's related to the word for circle.
Because Ku Klux Klan actually, I think, means family circle, and
Oh.
Ku Klux there's some
I
something.
don't think that's from a language, though.
Yeah, I think that might be Greek.
Might be based on some Greek.
Oh.
Yeah,
Anyway, I'm going to say Nazi is the word that can be used.
yeah. So Nazi
I think
can
that's
be-
a fairly easy
Nazi
one.
is playable
It's a
and kike-
legitimate party. I
right,
mean,
and
you know.
kike cannot be
Well, I
played.
don't know
Nazi has
how,
a
like-
capital letter. I just asked you this.
Somehow it got in enough sources. It's shown up with a lowercase letter, and so somehow it's been allowed. I can't say I've ever seen it lowercase, but apparently in some sources it was spelled with a lowercase. And now
I've
they
seen it
added-
lowercase on graffiti at synagogue.
Oh, there you go. All right, so Dan is
but wait, but hold on. I mean, I obviously you're not making the rules. You're just reporting them. But the Nazi Party, like the
would be
Democratic Party,
uppercase.
how could it?
that would be uppercase. But
Oh, you can use a Nazi as a generic term.
I guess
I
so.
get. I see.
guess so.
What are
All
you,
right,
Nazi?
Periel, you want to take
Like
a
a
turn?
communist? Yeah,
Right,
that makes
right.
sense. Okay, right.
I'm interested in how Dan got kike right out of the gate.
Well,
Yeah, it's very suspicious.
very suspicious because if Katie had to say it, some of us might recoil.
okay, I have dyke
Mm-hmm.
and les,
Right.
Lez.
So which one is permitted?
Well, dyke as a derogatory word for lesbians is usually spelled dyke, and this is spelled dike.
I meant to list both spellings. So in
Oh.
either form, which one do you think would
Well,
be
the
okay?
dike. You put your finger in the dike.
Right. So Noam figured it out with you. I think you were going that way too, right?
Or you stick your finger in
Right,
the
right.
dike.
That's what I meant.
Ah, no, Periel has.
What are you talking about?
All right. So you figured out correctly that
You know,
that word
I
has
could
a
kill
permittable.
myself for helping her. 'Cause I would have.
She
I
got
think
it,
she's
she
about
got
to get it wrong. No, she didn't know what a dike was.
Of course I did.
What is it?
It's what the hole in the thing with
the
the
little
water.
duck.
Oh, don't help her.
comes out.
What's a dike?
She said
It's
water.
the
She
hole
said
in the
water.
water comes out of. There's like a hole
it's a-
someplace in
No,
the
there's not supposed to be a hole in a dike.
right in there's where the
A dike keeps
wa-
the
I
water
don't think
out.
I know what a dike is either.
A dike keeps
It's
the
like
water.
A dam, like a
yeah, keeps the
No,
water.
Like a
but
little-
the
the-
I thought it
dike
was
is
like
the
a-
hole in the dam.
like the little.
No, the
dike
hole
is
is
not
not
the
the
hole.
dike.
The dike
The
is
little,
there, like
the little Dutch boy
but-
saved it. Right, there we go. Noam and I go back to the Dutch. All right.
Okay, so les is not allowed.
Les is more.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
No
But
more.
we
Les
should
And we
is
do
more.
know
I
him.
should
I
just
think that
do
after
all of
this we
these.
should move on because this could take a while.
No, no.
this
let's
is
go
good,
through all of
this
them.
is good.
Just have fun.
Why? But I
Have
don't know how many you want to do. I
I
mean, it's
got-
fun, but
I got 2 words, and I'm having trouble. I got 2 words: faggot and Nancy.
Mhm.
I said that a little too. Anyway, now I know that
Yeah, you
faggot.
relished it.
Yeah, I didn't mean to. I know faggot is supposed to be a bundle of sticks,
Right.
and I think that Nancy. I feel like that's also an adjective. I think like I feel it as an adjective, but just
Oh,
knowing.
you've heard it like in front of the word boy or something.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. They have a similar meaning. So one of them is permittable, and you can probably guess which one now.
But is it Nancy in front of a boy spelled with a Y? I'm because I mean I would think just based on the fact that faggot is a bundle of sticks that ought to be allowable, except that maybe because it's so controversial, like the word for stingy that you're not allowed to say anymore,
Oh.
which sounds like the N word.
No,
that
but-
maybe they just struck it from the.
Right, but you got it right.
Oh.
Because it has that other definition, oddly enough, it's allowed in play. even though it's an extremely offensive word. And
That literally nobody uses with the other definition.
Yeah.
I think that,
right, unless
well,
unless like
Unless you're
some
talking
parts
about
of English-
collecting
English-
a very small stick.
Well, unless you sell sticks for a living. Yeah.
Now there are plenty I have heard on TV plenty of British shows where someone says, "Can you spare a fag?" and they mean a cigarette,
right, but not
and not the longer word. And I never hear that, and you're right. But
So
somehow,
is fag allowed?
absolutely, cigarette in England. So
They also
somehow
say
that-
bugger, which you would think that's pretty
right, you
pretty
would think-
offensive.
Yeah, why is that one permitted? That's a good one. I forgot to include that on the list.
I mean, doesn't that? I don't want to say the meaning, but I think it's pretty bad.
Well, yeah.
It's pretty
I would.
derogatory.
I think this is a
mean.
fun game, but I do have questions for Dave as a super fan.
Well, can I get one here to the thing because this one seems tough, and I'm having to. I have in front of me wrinkly, WRINKLY,
Well, that seems perfectly reasonable.
which seems innocuous, and maybe it's supposed to be wrinkled, and wrinkly is, and then like wrinkly is like something you'd say about like, but why can't it be anyway? And ho, HO. Is that how you spell like she's a hoe?
Yes,
HO?
yes.
That's
Why are you
HOE.
looking
That's
at
HOE.
me?
No,
Why are you
HOE
looking
is something
at
as a
me?
farming implement.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. So
But the thing is, wrinkly sounds so innocuous. I would have to guess that wrinkly is the one you're not allowed
playing,
to use.
You're playing reverse or
Was
you,
that card?
Oh, you made a mistake.
No. Oh, yeah. In fact, I did. I brought that up as an example of a weird thing where, in the plural, neither one of them is allowed. Not that you would normally pluralize wrinkly, but apparently it refers to someone, I guess, like me, who's old. If you're old enough, as you were saying, you could be wrinkly. And so wrinkly, I can say this is wrinkly paper, but I can't say look at those wrinklies. And hoe has an acceptable definition, which is something you hear around Christmas time. It's an interjection, ho, ho, ho. And as soon as you add an S to it, it becomes something that you hear in certain songs, and we can't allow that in Scrabble. So
So
that's
neither are allowed.
both of them are allowed.
Both of them
in
are
the
allowed.
singular, neither one is
Neither
allowed.
allowed. Oh, okay.
In the
This
plural,
is
yeah.
crazy.
it's
Oh, and
arbitrary.
there's one fun one. I don't know how far you want to go with the game, and I'm happy to answer Dan's question. By the way, happy birthday.
Thank you, David. And by the way, for my birthday, anybody listening, it is my birthday as we record this October 20th in the year of the cock. Is when I was born. You can look up every 12 years the year of the cock. Buy my book as a birthday present for me. So if you want to buy me a birthday present, buy the book, and then I'll get a little bit of money.
and I read it, and I thought it was great.
Look through his book is great. Look through the sheets, and we can't do them all. But anybody else have anything else?
Boobies and poofs.
Yeah, there you go with some plurals.
Oh, I
Boobies.
think it would be poofs, wouldn't it?
Poofs you
That's a
can't use.
derogatory.
What's
Right.
Poof?
Booby prize.
Dave, but Dave, by the way,
Poof
also
is a slang for a gay person, I think.
Ah.
Right, but as a singular, it's just a sound.
A poof, or it's something you sit on too.
an
This chair.
onomatopoeia.
I don't know why that didn't become the definition. That should be. You're right. It should be completely permitted, and yet it can't be pluralized, but it can be in the singular.
She went up and poof.
Right. In a poop
Disappeared.
of it. Right. And the same. And then the other one you had was boobies. Now, in the singular, it could be a bird, but as soon as you pluralize it, it can only refer in that spelling. I guess it only refers to the. No, I take it back. In the singular with an IE, that refers to a breast, and they took that out. It's such an innocuous word. It's a word that little
Wait,
children
is
say.
tit allowed?
Yeah, it's also a kind of bird.
A tit is a
A
kind
tit bird, tit mouse. Those.
Tit
yeah, so it's a
mouse,
teat.
yep.
Like yeah.
What
so,
about tits?
because it's a pluralization of the thing that we just talked about, you can therefore use it.
this
So-
could be a whole other game. Is guess the word that is allowed in Scrabble, and now we have yet another game.
I
Yeah,
just
right.
like the
Spin-off of
fact that
Scrabble.
there's a rogue faction of Scrabble players that are willing to risk it all and play the words that they want to play and
Well, not
be
anymore,
very
they can't.
offensive.
Well, look,
So-
anybody can play.
Well, they should form their own.
Well, if
Alt-right
Scrabble,
Scrabble.
if you and I played Scrabble, we could say we're playing
Bad
Renegade Scrabble,
Yeah,
whatever you want to
Renegade
say. We're
Scrabble,
playing
that's a
Renegade
good one.
Scrabble, and we could, if I wanted to, I could say wrinklies, and I could put that down if I was feeling so
Yeah.
inclined.
And if I played in tournaments anymore, I would actually say to my opponent, "You're welcome to use any words that used to be allowed and were taken out, and as long as you're okay with my doing the same thing." Because I wouldn't want to feel like I was suddenly unable to play something that was, that we both agree is a word, and that's what.
Will we
legitimizes
say
it.
to our
Or say
listener?
like vanilla or hardcore Scrabble.
Yeah. You could
Would
do it
we
that
say
way.
to our listeners is play Scrabble as you? We've always said this to our listeners: is play the Scrabble you want to play. This is not tournament play, and you do your thing.
There's actually
You want to play in a tournament, then you got to worry.
My
about
wife
that.
one time said to my father that she Jewed somebody down,
really.
totally naively.
Oh wow.
Anyway, I would.
No concept that you weren't supposed to. She grew up so surrounded by that she had no concept that Jewing somebody down was something you weren't supposed to say.
Interesting. There was actually a suggestion, by the way, Dan, and you reminded me of this, by a person who was weighing in on both sides, saying, "What if we had tournaments where it said play at your own risk, similar to what Noam has been saying about swimming at your own risk here, right? You know when you go to a comedy show that you might hear things that are going to be offensive to certain people in the population, possibly even you, but you're also agreeing in advance that you know that could happen. And his suggestion was, why don't we just have a little disclaimer that says there might be words here that you're uncomfortable with, but
people
swim at your
getting
own risk.
really wild in the Scrabble world.
I am of the opinion. I thought about this privately. I mean, that's what I think about when I am of the opinion that the idea that hearing a word is actually seriously offensive to anybody, no matter what, I think that is a big lie. I don't think there is actually, I shouldn't say anybody, but I'd say 1 out of 1 million people who claim that they heard the word and they can't tolerate hearing the word, 1 out of 1 million is telling the truth. I just think it is just totally bullshit that you can't hear a word which can be used offensively, but that you can't hear that word in a non-offensive way.
Right.
And if you can't, then you are disabled as an adult.
I don't know if that's true. I do think that the N-word, even if used non-offensively, and Marina Franklin, I think, we were having this discussion.
Well, she's the 1 out of 1 million. I don't want to call Marina Franklin.
But I do, out of a non-black mouth, even if used unoffensively, even if I said, well, I heard somebody say, and I used the word, and I was horrified by it, say that's what I said, but I used the word, I think people would be. Yes, I think it would be upsetting to people
because they've been trained at this point to be offended by it.
Well, that may be, but
when we were kids, you would hear it out of anybody's mouth all the time.
But you said that it's bullshit, and I don't think with the N-word it is bullshit. I think people really
because you have kids in college classes where the professor will read James Baldwin out loud, and James Baldwin used the word. So they'll read it out loud, and kids will be up and I can't. This is violence.
Well,
I think that's just a lie.
You've got children, and I've done this already with my children. What are you going to do with Mark Twain? Are you going to read to them?
Well, I read my kids To Kill a Mockingbird, and I did not read the N-word.
Well, it's my book to bring it back to my book, and then I do want to ask Dave about.
See, that's not listening. I was in the middle of a story. But
you're right. That's not listening.
Go ahead.
That is not listening. That's correct.
Were you and
well,
Dan
because
are
I've been
gonna go
trying to
couples
move things
therapy.
along, and and we have no.
And
Unfortunately,
to move
there's no.
along, you saw an opportunity to talk about your book to move things along. So go ahead.
My book, very quickly. There's a character who uses the N-word, but I don't write the N-word. I write N asterisk asterisk asterisk. Even though it's a black character, I, as a white writer.
Yeah.
Made that decision. I don't know how you feel about it.
I thought that was the right thing to do, and I would have done exactly the same thing in your situation.
The book is Ira Spiro Before COVID, available on Amazon.
It is his birthday.
And it is my birthday, so a plug wouldn't be out of line.
You should have been able to write it out with the AH at the end, just like Quentin Tarantino does, just like in the Godfather.
Well, I was able. I just chose not to. I didn't think it was. I just chose.
I mean, you have to do whatever you need to do to protect yourself from getting in trouble.
How often do we get to have a super fan with us to answer all of our questions
Dan.
about how we can improve the Comedy Cellar?
Oh, you've asked me this before, Noam. I can't come up with anything other than that bathroom.
What's wrong? You in the bathroom here at the Comedy Cellar?
It's like the soup Nazi, where you have to walk in a certain way, and because there's no other way, but it's such a skinny.
Well, the
little
funny
bathroom.
thing is that he asked you things we could improve, and that's the one thing we can't improve
I
because
figured
it's
physically impossible.
It's physically impossible.
No, but that's my joke. I know it's a nod to we all know that the bathrooms are a little bit of a challenge to use, but
Have you been to the fat black rooms? Obviously.
oh yeah,
to the fat
beautiful.
black rooms.
Oh, the bathroom's a little funny there too.
No,
The
but-
bathroom's good. We renovated
much
the
better.
bathroom.
There's two rooms. There's the fat black lounge and the fat black bar.
Sure.
This is the second podcast this week I've heard talk about the Comedy Cellar bathroom. I listened to Coleman Hughes' podcast, and he brought up the Comedy Cellar bathroom as an example to some philosopher. He had
Sorry, I didn't go that way.
I don't want to. I know you don't want to hear the whole story because we have to move things along. But if you listen to Coleman's most recent podcast, this Comedy Cellar bathroom and the difficulty of it is challenges great intellectuals.
Why can't you make it bigger?
It's fine if you're small. I have a great time in the bathroom. I just go right in.
I don't
You also
mind it.
need a hook for handbags.
I would never use it for number 2.
I love that Periel said. I love that Periel asked, "Why can't you make it bigger?"
But you can't. Can't you just knock down one of those walls a little bit?
What do you think's behind that wall, Periel?
I don't know. I know.
Maybe the street or like the end of our property.
What is at the no? Because there are
The
tables
keyword is just.
there.
Why don't you just? It's the beginning of so many arguments.
Did you notice this at the end of the building? Do you notice it when buildings
No, I
end?
never-
Speaking of bathrooms, the bathroom at the Village Underground is wonderful.
Oh my
Yes.
goodness.
There's a bathroom attendant there on the
back?
weekends, and he has a bowl of candy.
Not anymore. Not anymore. He didn't come back after COVID.
Yeah.
No, but there was another guy that with a bowl. But I'm just
Lee.
saying the candy is weak.
Oh.
Okay, you got mint lifesavers. Come on, man.
Can I tell you a
What's
funny
wrong
story about
with
the
a
bathroom?
Lifesaver?
The bathroom in the Village Underground, when we first built it, we built it unisex because the bathrooms,
There's stalls.
there's individual rooms. There's individual rooms. So we built it as one big room with 8 individual rooms, 8 little like bathrooms,
Stalls.
and everybody would share the sink. Spent a lot of money. Building department came in and told us, you're not allowed to have unisex bathrooms. So we had to reconfigure the whole thing and separate it out. So it was and we put a wall up and all kinds of stuff. It was a beautiful bathroom. And now, only a few years later, I believe you're not allowed to have single-sex bathrooms. So now, like it's just
Well,
it's just
you are, but
ridiculous.
if
I see a
somebody
lot of
wants to
places with
use,
those.
if somebody says, I want to use the female bathroom, what are the criteria to allow that?
I don't,
If
who
somebody says,
cares?
I identify as a woman,
But this is the key point, just for the listeners. It's not like a bathroom where you are peeing next to somebody at a urinal or anything like that. It's like a bedroom. It is a door. Behind the door, you shut the door, and you are in your own room.
It's a bedroom with a lot of
It was
toilets.
the sharing of the sinks,
By the way,
which was the problem. You
I
get
had
that?
it-
It was the sharing of the sinks, which was the
A
problem.
lot of places are like that now, though. A lot of places.
Now, yeah. So-
I have an issue, by the
Yeah.
way, with regard to the bathroom at the Village Underground. I was in there. What can I tell you? I had maybe eaten too much hummus, whatever it was. I was in there doing what I prefer not to do in a public bathroom, and I was in there for slightly longer than it normally would be. And the bathroom attendant or whoever the manager knocks on the door and says, "Hey, what do you like?" Hey, man, I'm not going to identify the. Actually, I don't know. I don't remember who it was, but some Comedy Cellar employee knocked on the door and said, "Hey, get out! What are you doing in there?" It's like I wasn't finished yet.
You want me to talk to him?
No, because I don't know who it is. But I mean,
It's
is that
his birthday.
is that in line with Comedy Cellar policy? Do we interrupt a man when he's doing his business?
Well, you could have been doing coke in there. I
I
think
could
is
have
the
been, but
idea.
Especially
it
if
could
it's
have
the
been at least
weekend.
a lighter. Is everything okay in there? Would have been at least a better way of handling a
Could have been
situation.
Are you sure it was
sexual
even the bathroom attendant? It could have just been
It was
another
a
person. at the
Comedy
show.
Cellar employee, and I don't know who.
I
it
mean, he
was.
could have been saving somebody's life. You could have been
You
assaulting
really
someone
shouldn't
in
be
there.
doing that. in our bathroom.
I'd prefer not to.
Okay, he's got some more.
No, wait. but
Mr. Move things along. He's got things. He's got more.
Well, but I know I don't want. I don't think we should talk about.
The Scrabble is interesting.
We broached the subject,
Can we do?
and I thought it was
he
interesting. but
prepared. Let me see what he.
I
did.
understand that he
let's-
prepared.
let's
I
see.
prepared too.
Let's just see what this is.
I wrote out that whole
We have time. We
poo
have time.
story.
What is this? What is this?
Oh, that's a list of words that are surprisingly allowed and words that are surprisingly unallowed.
Okay, let me read. Let's just read the words quickly.
I would be careful.
Let's just read the words quickly that are allowed.
These are authorized words.
So the ones on
You
the
said
left
them.
I
side.
guess I've been over.
On the left side?
The left side will not
Oh.
be deleted. So we have words as relatively mild as ass and arse and asshole. So those words are allowed. I don't know why asshole is allowed because they took out nookie, which is a pretty common,
Nookie?
Yeah.
Nookie means like to get laid, or not to get laid, but to get like a little
That can-
action.
I thought that's what it meant. Maybe it has a derogatory term towards a particular group of people, but I
You
wasn't
can't
aware.
say retarded.
Now that's an interesting thing. You can because it has another meaning, like slowed down.
Yeah.
Right. So that was one of you guys had that on your quiz.
It was me.
Right. So that word was allowed, and yet what was the other one on that side?
Retardate.
Right. I don't even know what that word means. I mean, I've heard. I can imagine it, but that word is not permitted.
It's like
But
I think a retardate is like a person who's.
it's the same thing, right? But the particular word retarded has like I slow down, or retarded.
like
I'm
in
using-
retarded
music,
your progress.
right. Exactly.
But you can say dotard because that's what Kim Jong Il called Trump, right?
Pussy.
So another fun one
Octoroon you can't say.
that's on the list of words you can say.
Oh,
for
you
some
can
reason.
say. Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, you
oh.
can say pussy. It won't be deleted.
Right,
Well,
because it
as
could be
like a cat.
Right, because
Right.
it has that meaning. So the same issue we had with other words that we've talked about.
You
that-
can't say ballsy. You cannot say ballsy. These are offensive terms.
So strangely enough, right? Some of the words are so strange. Like,
Can't say fart.
right? If it's careful. No, that's a word that they took out of the dictionary, but allowed to be played still. So in other words, it's not in here, but it's on the poo list, as they call it.
It's allowed to be played in official play, but not for the school version.
Right, you got it. But the word that, if it's a strike-through word, then you can't play it under any circumstance, and that was where nookie came in, and another relatively inoffensive one that they moved over.
What?
By the way, yeah, feminazi is allowed.
What's wrong with pissant?
Well, it
It's
says
it's
you
no,
can't
it's
say
it was
feminazi.
offensive, but they left it in. So that's a word that they kept in.
Jism you
okay.
can use.
Now, are you allowed to say? Are you
I mean, it
allowed
says
to?
it right here on the list. It says offensive terms. Oh no, it says expurgated.
Now,
But
why
that
can
one-
you- why
but
can
no,
you
no,
say-
But it's only not in this dictionary, but it's on the poo list.
Jism is on the poo list.
right.
Jism. Why can't you say? Why are you allowed to say gyp? Like somebody gypped
I don't
you,
know.
which came
That seems
from
like a
gypsy,
huge
right?
oversight.
Yeah.
I don't use that word anymore, and I haven't for a long time because I know it offends a large group of people.
So what do you say instead?
Jew.
It's cheap.
Hey,
I
it's
think
October 20th, Nicole. Mark it down.
I think a big surprise was between the words redskin and redneck, which one was disallowed?
Red skin, I would think.
Wouldn't that make sense?
Isn't that
It's a type of peanut, so it stays in the dictionary.
Red skin
oh,
is a type
red
of paint.
skin peanut?
I
never
want
heard of
to.
it.
I want to meet these people. I mean, this is like so nonsensical.
A nerd off.
Twat.
Yeah, they can't. I don't know why they disallowed that. It's a body part. It's not a slur.
Oh,
is it?
Nancy with an E at the end. I'm pretty good actually. That I wrote that Nancy boy.
Can we ask?
Yes, go ask.
David.
I hope
them.
you're suitably impressed by that.
Ask.
Can we ask David Stone?
Yeah.
What he thinks about the Fat Black Pussycat rooms, as
Oh.
opposed to the Comedy Cellar original room and the Village Underground. Now,
All right. So I'll tell you an interesting thing that ties it all together because one
if
of
you
the
can
things
tie
I
it all
loved-
together, that's fine too.
One of the things I loved about the
Well, just before you answer, I just want to say you can say what you want because I can always cut it out. But the thing is that it's so ballsy and Nancy-ish for Dan to ask you a question like that, knowing that you could say something really negative about the room, and then it would go out on the air to Comedy Cellar fans and do damage. But go ahead, speak freely. Go ahead.
I think you probably know that I love every aspect of the cellar. So
Okay.
when you guys, well, first of all, when I came down here for the first time, it was like 2012, and I met Artie, and right away we hit it off.
This is Lang, not Fuqua.
No,
I mean,
Artie
Fuqua.
Fuqua, and he took me up to that cool area on the top, that little area in the top of the Fat Black.
Oh, you don't want to take a black light up there. Go ahead.
Okay, maybe not. No, we hung out. No, it was a beautiful moment. We hung out and talked about
Which is allowed.
family.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
He had. All right, sorry to turn things down, but he had just lost his son. So we were talking about family and children, and I have children of my own, and I just couldn't imagine what he was going through. So we had this lovely talk that was so much deeper than anything I expected, and that's where we became pretty fast friends. And so then fast forward a couple years, and Will Sylvince has the idea to turn Fat Black into New Joke Night, right? And I thought that was such a brilliant idea because I go to the cellar week after week, sometimes several times in a night, and I hear the best of it, but I wonder where are they working on this? I want to hear the stuff that's in progress because I'm looking at the comedy as a true art form and one of the most difficult ones because it's something you can't practice at home. So you can only do it as, a person in front of an audience, truly. And where were we ever going to get to see that? And there it was at the Fat Black. So that was really cool. And so I love that space. It's different, obviously. It's like at the time I went, it was all couches, and it had sort of an odd configuration, and I would always try to sit in the front row or nearby. I love that space. It's not the physically most comfortable, but I don't think it has to be. I think it's just it's a great space, and it works.
But the bar is really good now, in my opinion.
So here's an interesting thing about that New Joke Night. So there have been comics who have white comics who have tried out jokes that had the N-word in them. And I thought, oh, that's really interesting. Because then I saw those same jokes around the corner, and they had taken out that word. It just didn't work. I think they figured out, it's not right. I'm getting people to focus on the wrong thing. It's ruining the joke more than it's adding to the joke.
Oh, you can't say the N word anymore. Yeah, I mean,
No, but this is just a few years ago.
yeah, but no, things have moved very fast.
It's
So supercharged.
I had a joke in my act probably over 20 years ago with the N word, and I did it, I think, twice, and then just said, I'm never saying that word ever again on stage. Forget
Right.
it.
And then even jokes that make fun of people who happen to be black, even if it's something that we can relate to in one way or another. So one of my favorite comics is Phil Hanley, and he had a joke that involved pornography, and he took out the idea that the people involved were black because it wasn't necessary for the joke, and it could maybe hurt some people's feelings, and he changed it. It was an interesting progression. Do you know which joke I'm referring to?
No, I don't know that. I
I don't
mean,
know if I can.
maybe if you
remember it.
named it, I would know.
Maybe,
Um,
doesn't want you. I don't know.
I don't know if I can even go into the specifics.
I
I'm certainly
think
not going to
that's
ruin
the
Phil's joke,
case
but
with a lot of things, though. Like I had a joke that had the word was about that I said the word rape, and like you could just see that everybody just like tensed up. And then Lenny Marcus told me that I should try doing the same exact joke and just change the word rape to sexual assault.
right. I heard you talk about that, and that worked, right?
It did.
What's word choice is so
Yeah.
it's such like a game of switching things in and out and seeing what works and what doesn't and trial and error.
But it's crazy just for like one minor.
Well,
change
well,
like
I
that.
think no. Lynn Cobblers has a joke. It's more than a joke. It's an entire series of jokes. With
It's a
the word,
chunk.
with the word. It's a chunk. It's a chunk. It's what
Mm.
we call a chunk in comedy. And it is her close. I mean, I don't know if she still uses it as a
Yeah,
closer,
just a couple
but
weeks ago.
it annihilates, and the whole thing is about rape.
Yeah.
But it's because
Oh,
she,
yeah,
because she's a woman
that-
and
yeah,
she's
but
turning
that's so
and she's
different.
turning it around and she's really hammering the point home, which is that she's raping the rapist. And of course that means that she's taking power from
But the
someone.
point is, rape is not a no-go word
Right.
necessarily.
Yeah,
Right,
That's true. That
right.
that chunk is brilliant. I've seen. Her
Whereas
do that.
the N-word for a non-black person is, I think,
Are you still allowed to say?
more or less a no-go word.
Are you still allowed to use say chunk in Scrabble? Because that's a derogatory term for a fat Chinese person. I thought.
Yeah, both. Right,
You're
both.
It
kidding.
has-
Is that
it ha-
true?
I don't know if you want to keep that in there, but
It's a joke. It's a
I
joke.
know there's no word. As far as I know, there's no word for a Chinese person that has been taken out because they all have some other.
You guys didn't give me enough credit for that. That was clever.
No, that was very
It
funny.
was great. It was great.
But it has, if as long as it has another meaning, that's officially allowed.
I don't know. This whole thing seems very fishy to me.
What whole
The,
thing?
the
Can you
way
say
that
fishy?
the way that they're making up these rules of like what's okay.
Well,
Well,
that's
again, this is for official Scrabble rules. Anybody playing at home is welcome to play by the rules that they want to play by.
Right, sure. The problem is that I can understand in school Scrabble how it might make some parents.
Well, I never
upset.
played Scrabble in school, but
It's a new thing. They're trying to make it more popular. Like school chess has been popular. That's a big chess program. There are a lot of people who play in who
People don't want
coach
their
Scrabble.
nerdy kids running around saying fart, trying to make friends with the cool kids.
So do you live near the cellar that you come here so often?
Near enough, Upper West Side, but it's just straight shot on the sea. They actually took out for a while the word pee, and that when I say take out, they put it on the poo list, meaning it wasn't in school Scrabble.
On the P list.
P is on the poo list.
Right, exactly. And then
And poo
I
is
think
on the
they
poo
later
list.
put it back in as a variant of the spelling of the letter P-E-E. But you couldn't put a D on it because then it was the verb peed
So weird.
or ing, right? So there's all these obscure words. They might as well, as my opinion is, they might as well just not do it and say what we talked about before. Swim at your own risk. And then maybe make certain alterations for things that are going to be televised because it could violate FCC standards or people's good taste or whatever. And, it's tricky, but
Well,
I think
then
it was handled better.
forget about the
with that
FCC. I'll see it on streaming and get the good stuff.
Can you say blowjob?
Yes. Only again, not in school Scrabble, but yes, in the official,
Why? What's the other meaning for blowjob?
no other meaning. It's a
It's
word
on the
that-
poo list.
It's not a derogatory term, right? So it's not offending someone in the same way that ofe theoretically would be offending some ancient white person.
Can you say queef?
I think so. It's a good question. Didn't look
That's
that
a
one-
medical term. I think that's. You say that to your doctor.
He is looking up.
think
You know what? It's
so.
not going to be in here because this is the
Non-poo list.
Yeah, exactly.
Is there a poo list dictionary?
Yeah, it was hard to get a hold of. I had to ask a friend who still plays in the Scrabble, in the club that I used to go to here in the city.
Get it in a brown paper book cover.
No, but is there like an actual like
This is the pool list.
book?
Yeah, I think there's another copy.
Okay.
Noam, you can look at
Is
this.
this a single page? Why does it feel thick? But it's only.
I just happen to
Coffee.
find a
Well,
copy.
You printed it on cardstock?
Is
That's
coffee is coffee.
Okay.
Oh, Kafifi.
yeah,
Yeah.
These
I
are the
don't think they allowed
words.
that one yet, right?
These are the words no longer approved. Will cause challenge plays to be ruled invalid. Abos, blackamoors, botchies,
B-O-C-H-E, Bosch.
bosh.
That's French for the Germans. What the French used to call Germans during the war.
Came from, it's a putting together of cabbage head.
Bog trotter.
I didn't know that.
Bog trotter's an ancient one for an Irish person.
Poontang.
Oh, I'm offended.
Cock teaser. Now, what's wrong? Why can you say blowjob but not cock teaser?
Go figure.
Why can't you say poontang?
Again, that's a real mistake because that's a body part, and I don't think that could be offensive as a slur. So it violates their own rules, and it's kind of inconsistent, along with nookie.
Colored.
Now that word is allowed.
Coloreds. You can say
Right.
color, but not coloreds.
Right, I colored in the the page, but you can't stick an S on it because then you're definitely referring to a group of people in a derogatory way.
No cunt, no cunts, no dago, no dagos, faggy or any.
But
of those-
again, you just said a word that is a very common word in England when you're talking to your mates, and B, a body part. So that should be permitted, and they took it out anyway.
Well,
can't
again,
say Hebes.
look, we have to underline that the Scrabble. These are this is a man-made list, and so there's going to be things that you know
Now here's an interesting
that
one.
you may not agree with.
You can't say mulatto,
right,
that's
but you can say
interesting.
octoroon, which I thought was a related kind of word.
but mulatto.
But you can, however, say mulatto.
Mulatto was, I guess, has become a negative word, a derogatory word. But
You and I
didn't,
grew up
I
hearing
didn't
that all the time.
know that. Yeah, I didn't know
Right.
it was like.
But it came from a derogatory place, and I think eventually people realized, oh, that's like mule, like that's not a positive thing to
Can you say
So I can understand why they took
Milano?
it out.
But you can say half breed.
Well, you can say it, but it's not permitted in Scrabble.
It's not printed. I don't see it
It
on
would
the
have
list
to be
here.
hyphenated. That's why.
What about Milano?
The cookie?
The
Yeah.
cookie, yeah,
I think you'd have to capitalize.
Peckerwood.
exactly.
Yeah, mulatto. I didn't realize that came from a bad place. It was people were playing it like I was like.
Yeah, I heard that years ago, and I finally realized, oh my god, I could never say that.
I've heard
again.
black people describe people as mulatto. They didn't. I mean, I think it's something.
I think it goes back to your generation. Like we're old enough to have heard that like the same way that your wife said Jude, thinking it was just a normal way of saying to bargain, and didn't realize it had a negative connotation for a lot of people.
But this is also interesting that
Ignorance of the
if
law.
if a word which was always innocuous takes on an offensive connotation, we will respect that and strike it.
As long as it doesn't have an occulous meaning, right?
What's
So as lo-
occulous mean?
I'm making it up.
Oh.
Opposite of innocuous. So as long as
Oh,
it doesn't
occulous.
have a mild.
But wait, let me finish.
Like
However-
red skin the peanut.
But if we find a word which is currently totally innocuous, and somebody uncovers the fact that 200 years ago its derivation was something offensive,
That's Ofe.
we can't tolerate it.
Right.
We have to all learn the fact that this was once. It's such bullshit.
It draws attention to words that no one ever thought about, like bukra and Ofe and these other words that you're like, what does that even mean? And they have to go look it up where, not in the Scrabble dictionary. And those are, again, obscure terms for a white person in it.
And again,
pejorative
it's not that I don't respect the idea of trying to be respectful to people. It's just that I just think it's such a lie. I just think that the notion that grown-ups can't handle a word. So you know what? That word originally was offensive hundreds of years ago. Oh, okay, that's interesting. And we it's not anymore. No, we can't handle that. We can't comprehend that. We treat ourselves like we're just I don't know what the word is, like just what's the word? You're a Scrabble guy. What's the word? What's the word I'm looking for?
Dangerous.
I think you're thinking, no, I think the opposite. I think you're treating ourselves as if we're made out of paraffin or something. Like we're just, onion skinned. We can't stand to be hurt. Like these trigger warnings that college professors have to give before they do something that we would think of as pretty mild or, fair game or whatever from the past. Now it's all trigger warnings. So I think we've become a very sensitive society. And by the way, it's not worldwide. England didn't go this way at all. They rebelled and said, no, we're absolutely not changing our dictionary. And they had the vote that they took there was, pronounced, favor of keeping the dictionary as is. Whereas here it was more like 50-50.
And there's a lot of Yiddish words on this list.
You're talking about the
Shiksa,
Scrabble
goy,
dictionary and
They have their own version.
So are there a lot of Scrabble refugees living in
There
England?
are some. Yeah, there's a decent number. Yeah, all the Yiddish words are taken out like goy. Seems like a pretty mild word, and shiksa is,
I find that offensive.
yeah, sure you do. So yeah, they took those out.
Well, the ironic thing is that they were Yiddish words, so they had to bring them in at one time. They weren't English,
Right.
so it had to require the exception to bring them in, and then they had to usher them right back out. Is that correct? Yeah.
Wait, we
Exodus.
are. Noam, I don't know how much more time you want to do, but
We're good, I
we're
think.
at about an hour 20. I do want to give Katie Hannigan an opportunity to plug whatever she has coming up, if
Oh,
anything.
I do.
if
You know
you would
what?
like
I'm
to.
actually going to be releasing my own podcast with a fellow comedian, Sarah Talamash, and I will be releasing our first podcast. It's called Lady Journey.
And Sarah Talamash is also in a comic relationship. She is married to Joe List.
Yes, and we'll be dishing, and we'll be going on journeys together, and we will be talking about organizing. And our first episode's coming out on Halloween. So, Lady Journey, please find it.
I know I don't want to point out the fact that you're not Jewish, but do you think releasing a podcast on Halloween is actually it's kind of not a day that people are they're doing other
know.
things on Halloween?
What
I
does
know,
that,
but
what
it's a
does that
brunch-
have to do with not being
It's a
Jewish?
brunch
Because it's
podcast.
bad business sense.
Oh.
Well, it's for middle-aged
obvious.
women, and Halloween is not a big holiday for us.
Middle-aged women.
They have
a lot of them are-
kids.
Well,
They'll have-
yeah.
We
They're-
like
they're
to
working on
have a little
costumes
Halloween
along with their husband.
brunch.
You're
You
not
know,
middle-aged. How
Sweater-
old are you?
It's-
I'm 35.
That's not middle-aged.
Middle-aged.
Okay, well, that's the age range. Once you get to 30s, Halloween.
If I went out with a
That's about it.
35-year-old woman, people say she was too young for me. How so that
She
can't be
would
middle-aged.
too young for
Well, we
you.
have to. How old
Well,
are you? You have to
maybe
do the
you're old.
formula.
59.
Maybe
So
you're
you have to
old.
divide it.
Divide by 2 and
By-
add 7.
Yeah, and I can't really do the math on an odd number
Well,
like
just
that.
make
I
him
don't
30 and
think.
then, make him 60 and then be 37.
27,
So you're
27.
close. It's close.
It's close.
Look,
It's
he
close.
did that math so fast.
In a
Yeah,
couple
you
years.
would be old enough for me. Not that I would. I'm just saying.
Well, thank you.
He creeped me out. I know what he meant.
I'll be writing the Scrabble board about that one.
Dave, if you're a lover of great literature, and I know you said you enjoyed my book,
I did.
although who knows, you might be just saying that.
No,
but
I
anyway,
loved it. I
No, it
was
was
imagining it-
objectively a fantastic
Dan,
book.
I was imagining it as a movie the entire time I read it, and I was loving it.
It was so.
I'm
it
looking forward to
was
being picked
so
up by
detailed.
some movies. Some
You
studios
really
should
felt like you were
definitely-
living it.
Absolutely. I couldn't. I read it in a day and a half. I couldn't put it down.
I felt the same way,
Pa-
although I did put it down, but then I picked it back up.
it's Iris Spiro Before COVID, available on Amazon. Periel also has books.
What's happening with the audiobook? How come you did not have an audiobook?
What
Well,
about
we'll
doing
get
what's
to the
happening
audio.
with the live podcast question and answer for his book? Remember, you said you were going to make
Yes.
exceptions here and no live podcast.
Can you guys just
rule?
do it without me? I don't.
Nope.
I am too stage fright to go on
You
stage and do
are
a live
not-
podcast.
Well,
do
he
not
doesn't
have
want to do it.
stage
We'll
fright.
discuss it later. Periel also has books available on Amazon. The Only Bush I Trust Is My Own and On My Knees, both memoirs available on Amazon. Periel Aschenbrand.
I also want to say that it's also my father's birthday today.
Oh, okay.
What do you think about
Wow.
that?
And I believe it is Joey Cola, I believe, another comedian, also his birthday today. Probably others as well. It's a
Can't
great
say super bitch.
And on that note,
That's on the list.
Why
Is
do you
there
look at me
anything,
when you say those
David,
words?
you would like to say or promote or
I'll promote my own birthday, which is on the day that we were going to release, or you are going to release your podcast.
On Halloween.
on All Hallows Eve?
Wow.
I'm
Oh.
a Halloweeny. Yeah.
Well, happy birthday to you. You can
Thanks.
enjoy my podcast, Lady
That's what I'll
Journey.
be doing.
Great.
And by the way, Noam, we interviewed. When should we put up the Rick Wakeman episode? Because
I had an idea. I'm trying to get another musician. I want to
Yeah.
cut it together into it. I'm going to cut in some sound clips of Rick Wakeman. I'm going to try to
How
really
was
make
that?
it
Did you
interesting.
guys-
because I
enjoy it?
did say in the episode that he'll be at City Winery October 25th. So
That's all right.
whatever.
Did you guys miss me? How was it without me?
It was kind of good.
It was very. I mean, music nerds will enjoy the episode. It was very, very.
I'm going to make it more. I'm going to spruce it up.
So it wasn't that interesting without me.
No, it was, but I just he referred to things that a lot of people wouldn't understand, but I can fix that.
Do you know who Rick Wakeman is, David?
No, I don't. Who's that?
He was in Yes, the band Yes, and he was also did a lot of solo work. He played piano or keyboard for David Bowie's Space Oddity, and also Morning Has Broken. Cat Stevens. He was the
He wore a
keyboardist for
cape.
that.
He was a big rock
Did you
star. at
ask
one
him
time.
about the cape?
No, I don't know anything about the Cape. Anyhow, podcast at comedycellar.com for comments, suggestions. Do you want to hear more Scrabble talk? If so, let us know. What do you think about the pool list? Questions, comments of any kind. Have you read On My Knees? Do you have thoughts about that? Email us. We want to hear from you. And we will see you or speak to you, or you'll hear from us next time on Live from the Table. Thank you.